The way we've been talking about climate is not working. It's setting down the facts because nobody really cares about facts.
There's a lot of misinformation about climate change, and even some fake news. So we're here to unfake it, because from fires in California to hurricanes in the east, climate change is hitting us hard, and we need to do something about it. But what can we do? Can we even make a difference? Has our time in lockdown helped slow climate change? Find out in Unfaked, where we bring you Chief Sustainability Officer Gero and Mayor Heidi Harmon to break it all down.
My name is Gero, and I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for Los Angeles County.
Hi, my name is Heidi Harmon. I'm the mayor of San Luis Obispo and a longtime climate activist and mother of two.
One misconception is that this is somehow about some big esoteric, kind of saving the world, whereas it's really about saving human lives and protecting public health. Climate change is going to affect your health. Whether it's extreme heat, which most people don't realize that as far as weather-related events are concerned, heat kills more people than hurricanes, tornadoes, any other weather-related phenomena. It's low-income people, it's communities of color that are going to be disproportionately impacted by changes that climate change is going to bring. And that's not just true locally, but it's true globally. The populations that are going to suffer the worst are poor folks who don't have the means to escape the impacts that we're going to see. And you could see literally millions of lives at peril.
There was just this tragic story that came out of Hurricane Sandy that also intersects with racial justice and the environmental justice piece of all of this that's so important to lift up in this conversation. But she was a Black woman with two young boys trying to escape the rising waves of Hurricane Sandy, and her vehicle was overcome and she had her boys in her hands. She had to get them out of the car and try and save them, and the water was too much. They were overtaken and the boys slipped out of her hands. And then she went to neighbor to try and get help. And the perception was that her race precluded people from helping her. And so that story to me, that's what I have so much empathy and share to some extent, the grief of mothers that are losing their children to climate crisis. And I feel grateful to still have my kids here with me, but that's the outcome I'm essentially trying to keep from happening for all of us, is that our children get, swept away right out of our own hands. And at the very least, I want my kids to know that I did all I could.
I think about the violence of pollution, and sometimes it's called slow violence because it's not a gunshot to the body, but it's day after day being exposed to toxins and air pollutants and water pollutants that really start to degrade people's health. And if you live near a freeway, for instance, you're more likely to have asthma. In LA County, 1/4 of all African American children have asthma. Think about that. 1/4 of all African American children have asthma. Why is that? It's not because they've got some physiological difference than anybody else. It's because we've designed our communities in a way that disproportionately burdens them with air pollution. We've put our freeways, we've put our industrial facilities in Black and brown communities on purpose because we felt that those lives were expendable.
There's so many, just endless amounts of resources out there for good information, especially for municipalities, because that's really where the rubber's hitting the road on climate action with our new carbon neutrality goal, which is to be carbon neutral by 2035. At the time that we committed to that, I don't think this is true anymore, but at the time, and for quite some time after that, it was the most ambitious carbon neutrality goal of any city in the United States. Having done years of activism on the outside, it's really cool to be on the inside, being a decider to create a goal like that. We're still figuring out all the details on how to get there. So Community Choice Energy, and we're a part of what's now called Central Coast Community Energy. And basically what it does is take the investor-owned utility out of the energy creation piece and replaces it with clean renewable energy that not only gets clean renewable energy to you in your home, but it also creates a pot of money that in the investor-owned model would normally go to the investors. In this model, it goes back to the community. And so it also creates a pot of money to do things like making existing homes more energy efficient, more EV charging stations, all kinds of other programs. Also, we had already divested from fossil fuels. We've done a lot around getting people out of their single-use occupancy vehicles and on to other modes of transportation, and particularly protected bike paths. We have a relatively new policy of, we call it building decarbonization. And really what that means is that for the most part, all new residential homes will be built without any fossil fuels whatsoever. So they'll be all electric homes. That was a very bumpy policy fight, so to speak. The gas workers union pumped in a lot of money into our community, pumped in a lot of misinformation, and just straight up threatened to bring in busloads of potentially COVID positive folks into our community to interrupt our meeting during COVID. And I guess to infect us with COVID even. So it can be an intense process especially when you're one of the first cities tackling a lot of these cutting edge policies. And then I would say last, but certainly not least, and there's a lot more that we're doing, but really looking now at a just recovery. So everything we do at the city, all of our policies and programs are done through the dual lenses of climate action and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those two issues are primary in our thinking about what we're doing and how we're doing it here in the city. We'll also be prioritizing climate action projects that will have the benefits of potentially job creation, and if there's any equity piece that we can be really mindful of as well moving forward. We also are just now launching a carbon sequestration effort in our open space that we hope will not only highlight the carbon reduction piece, but also all the benefits to crop production that those programs have as well, and that folks in the outlying areas will look at our program and adopt it too. And that's a great way of getting people that don't feel very accepting of climate crisis into the climate solution piece regardless. You have ranchers and farmers and folks like that have really nothing but benefits from engaging in better, healthier soil.
The thing that cities do is they're on the kind of front lines in dealing with people. And when you live in a city, you look to your local government to help you and support you and in some cases protect you. But I don't think cities alone are going to solve this problem. I think we need national governments, whether it's the money in the infrastructure bill. A lot of that is actually to help make our communities more resilient to climate change and to get EV charging infrastructure out there and to get incentives for electric vehicles and a whole range of other things that aren't being necessarily described as climate change, which maybe is the right way to do it, but are being described as a way of ensuring that we're a competitive economy, going forward, that the rest of the world has long known that, we need to transform our economy to a cleaner one. And to do that, it takes money. And the federal government is the only place that actually can run a deficit. And sometimes you essentially need to borrow money to invest now to make the changes now. We need everybody kind of working in the same direction to address this issue. So yeah, cities are of course, I'm a local government person. I'm going to say cities are the heroes, but we all need to be heroes if we're really going to solve this thing. Yeah, of course. We've seen some radical changes that people thought would take 10 years to get done. Things like massive teleworking. The pandemic forced us into this grand experiment where people were just sent home and said, work from home, and allowed for us not to be out there driving. And you're right, the air got better when people weren't out driving. So I'm hopeful, and I actually fully expect that there will be much more telework in the future. So I think that's one in particular highlight that we've seen. The other is one that I hope is made permanent. We've seen the roadways that were dedicated to cars in the past given over to pedestrians and bicycles. We've closed down streets. We've taken out lanes of traffic and turn them into outdoor dining areas. You don't have to have maximum traffic flow on every roadway. You can actually slow things down a little bit and make the roadways work for everybody.
I am a big fan of the Green New Deal. I think it does a beautiful job of incorporating the expansiveness that we need to be looking at in order to really get to the solutions, that we can't just focus on climate action and leave people of color and workers behind. So it weaves all of that into it. I'm a big fan of unionized labor. And so it names that specifically in the Green New Deal, that unionized working people need to be lifted up and included in all of those conversations. I think traditionally environmental action, climate action has been seen as an attack on jobs at times. And so it's great to see people understanding that jobs and climate action need and do certainly go together.
Everybody has a role to play. I think individuals have a role to play, cities have a role to play, counties have a role to play, states, national governments, and even, of course, the UN. The climate crisis is so significant and so global that there's no one solution. Motor vehicles, cars, trucks, buses, heavy-duty trucks, delivery trucks, everything needs to get to be battery electric as soon as possible. That's not going to happen overnight. People are buying gasoline and diesel cars today, and those cars are going to be on the road for a while. But we have to get to a point where those are no longer an option. The second thing is we have to electrify and get the fossil fuels out of our buildings. Our buildings burn an awful lot of gas, methane gas. And methane actually, as a climate pollutant, is much more dangerous than carbon dioxide. And so we need to get to a point where we're just not burning fossil fuels for things like water heating. There's electric water heaters today that work perfectly well. You and I don't care when we go into the shower how the water got hot. All we care is that it's hot, right? And the same with our heating systems. We need to stop thinking that you have to burn something in order to make it warm in your apartment. And cooking. We need to get gas stoves out of homes. They are the most polluting appliance you have in your house. When people cook, the air quality inside their homes from the burning of that gas is worse than national standards for outdoor air quality. So you're polluting the inside of your house worse than you would be allowed to pollute the outside. So converting our building systems to run on electricity. And then of course we need to produce all of our electricity from renewable clean sources, right? We can't keep burning stuff to produce the electricity. If we do those two things or three things with 100% renewable energy, we've solved 75% of the problem in LA County. And then we can start, getting to the smaller pieces. Most stuff doesn't actually get recycled, even if you put it into a recycling bin. This has been a hoax that has been perpetrated on us by the plastics industry, that stuff gets recycled. Most of it doesn't, unfortunately. While it may be technically recyclable, rarely, if ever, gets recycled. If you look at the little symbol on the bottom of a piece of plastic, it's only 1 and 2 that traditionally or commonly get recycled. So those are soda bottles, water bottles, and milk jugs.
What's some general advice that you have for Gen Z?
I think young people really underestimate the power that you have within your own family unit and your own little worlds that we're all in. There's been many stories of senators and other people of power who were climate deniers, whose children came to them and said, no, I'm not going to vote for you, Dad, and maybe even speak to you if you don't get on board with climate crisis,
Yeah.
And I think, everybody's got a different relationship with their parents and grandparents, etc. But if it feels comfortable, I would bring it up, start there in your own family unit.
Register to vote and vote regularly and vote, make sure that we're electing people that reflect our values. And it gets really easy to get cynical about the political system. I've worked in it for 30 years, and so I've had my share of cynical moments. But I've also seen how when you elect really good, smart leaders who are interested in doing the right thing, how impactful they can be. And some of my biggest heroes are politicians who've done the right thing for the climate. And the only way they get in is by winning elections. And the only way they win elections is by having a group of people who are consistently voting. They count on the regular voters, the people who will show up. And so I think, if I give any advice to Gen Z is to use your political power. Related to that is to expand your political power. So not just as an individual vote, register to vote and vote, but actually go out and organize, build coalitions, right? Get large mass movement of Gen Z people across the spectrum. Get the Black Lives Matter folks in the same room as the vegan environmental folks and find the common ground and build a coalition. Because it's only by getting a large group together that you can affect real change. I think individual action is great, but I think mass mobilization is even better.
Yes, definitely. I agree. And I don't know if you heard about our previous project that we were working on was Bring on the Ballot. And so that definitely directly dealt with the election and everything like that. So we definitely know all about that. And I definitely recommend that to everyone else out there.